Okay, so you're one of those guys interested in, like, what's really going on between men and women, right? Especially all those, like, hidden agreements.
Yeah.
Those covert contracts everyone's talking about. The kind of things that might be messing with your marriage.
Yeah.
You want to know, like, how do we even get here?
Right.
Well, get ready, because we're going deep on Connie Riker's book, The Female Supremacy Paradox. And let me tell you, this book flips the script on pretty much everything you thought you knew.
Absolutely. This book is really something else. What gets me is how it just goes right at that whole patriarchy thing.
Yeah.
Like all that talk about male dominance, Riker just says straight up, it's a facade.
Whoa, 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 hold up. So you're saying things ain't what they seem.
Nope.
If it's not a patriarchy, what is it then?
Well, Riker's big idea is that it's women running the show.
Huh.
Female supremacy, she calls it.
Okay.
And she says women, they've always had tons of power. But like in sneaky ways, you know? Behind the scenes kind of stuff. Shaping how society works and what we all expect.
I need like an example here.
All right, so Riker, she talks about Queen Elizabeth I.
Right.
Ruled an empire right, never got married, and had a crazy amount of power.
Yeah, but in a system that was supposed to be all about men. Right.
Exactly. But she totally thrived. Riker uses that to show how women have always figured out how to work the system, even when it seems like it's against them.
So how does all this connect to the covert contracts idea? That's what I really want to get.
Yeah.
Like, how's this playing out in my marriage?
Well, Riker says all those expectations we put on men.
Yeah.
Like being the provider,
Yeah.
the protector, taking on certain roles. That's basically a covert contract. And she says it's women who keep those expectations going.
Really?
Maybe not on purpose, but it's definitely happening.
So society's like setting up these unspoken rules where men got to perform certain rules or else.
Exactly.
And everybody just pretends it's always been this way.
Yeah, and Riker's like, hold on a minute. Are these expectations actually good for anyone? Or are they just a way to control men and take away their choices?
It got me thinking about all that pressure on men to be the breadwinner.
Yeah.
Be strong. Don't show your feelings. Is that part of this whole covert contract thing?
Riker would say absolutely.
Huh?
She says that pressure benefits women.
How so?
It lets them go after what they want, have their own ambitions, and still have a partner who's taking care of all that traditional stuff.
This female supremacy idea, this is a lot to take in. What else does Riker talk about?
She gets into this concept called hypergamy.
Hypergamy, yeah.
It's basically the idea that women are naturally driven to go for higher status partners.
Like guys who are better providers.
Yep. Better protectors, the whole 9 yards.
I can see that.
Riker says it's just instinct. But it's something we like demonize in society.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. On one hand, we tell women be ambitious, go for it. But then if they look for a guy who can back that up, suddenly they're a gold digger.
Or manipulative or something.
Exactly. It's a classic double bind.
Right.
Riker calls it out. Women are told to go for successful partners, but then they get judged for doing it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Riker doesn't think that's a mistake.
Oh.
She thinks it's part of the plan.
What do you mean?
She says that double bind, it's key to female supremacy. It lets women have it both ways.
Wow. I'm already seeing things differently here. Now, Riker also talks about this emotional labor gap, right? What's that all about?
Right. So Riker argues that there's all this work that goes into relationships, invisible work.
Okay.
And women end up doing most of it.
Like what?
Managing emotions.
Yes.
Smoothing over arguments, being the emotional caretaker for everyone, in the family, in relationships, everywhere.
Give me an example. Like, what does that look like in real life?
Think about planning family events.
Remembering birthdays, making sure everybody feels heard and cared for. Or think about the energy it takes to have those tough conversations. Comfort someone who's upset. Calm things down when things get tense.
Okay.
Riker says women are expected to handle most of that.
And men get a free pass.
Too much.
But isn't that just women being more like nurturing, naturally more empathetic?
That's what we've always been told.
Yeah.
But Riker says, hold on. Is that expectation actually good for women? Or is it a way to control them? Limit their choices?
And benefit men.
Exactly.
Man, this is making me rethink some things in my own marriage.
Yeah.
I'm seeing those unspoken expectations in a whole new light.
It's eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So if it's women calling the shots, what's happening to men then?
Well, Riker says we're in a masculinity crisis.
A masculinity crisis.
Yep. And she says it's a direct result of men losing power in a world shaped by female supremacy.
So she's saying men are losing their sense of purpose. Like they don't know what their role is anymore
Exactly.
because the old rules don't apply.
Right.
Mm.
She says all those traditional masculine qualities,
Yeah.
strength, stoicism, assertiveness, they're demonized now, and men are left feeling lost and confused, like they don't belong.
This is hitting home for me. I bet a lot of guys listening feel the same way.
I bet so.
But it's not like she's just pointing fingers at women, is she? Does she offer any solutions, any way out of this mess?
She does, and that's what we'll dive into in the next part of our deep dive. Riker doesn't just want to point out the problem. She wants to help men understand it, see how they might be caught in these covert contracts, and ultimately rewrite the rules of the game.
This is heavy stuff. It feels like we're just scratching the surface.
We are. The Female Supremacy Paradox is a dense book, packed with ideas that really challenge how we think about men and women. But that's what makes it so fascinating, especially for people who are ready to question the status quo.
Deep divers, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll keep exploring Connie Riker's ideas and see what solutions she offers for navigating this whole gender dynamics thing. Okay, so we've laid out some of Riker's main ideas, right? Female supremacy, those covert contracts, this whole masculinity crisis thing. It's a lot to process. But where do we go from here? What does Riker actually offer guys to, like, deal with all this?
Well, one thing she really pushes is understanding this concept she calls the matriarchal mirage.
The matriarchal mirage.
Yeah, she says even in societies that look like they're run by women, where women seem to have all the power, the system still benefits them underneath it all.
So, like, the illusion of power is just as good as the real thing.
That's what she's saying. And it's tough to spot, right?
Yeah, how's a guy supposed to see through this mirage? It seems like it's designed to be invisible.
Riker would say, you gotta start paying attention to the stories we tell about men and women, the narratives.
Okay.
Like she uses Queen Elizabeth I as an example again, remember?
Yeah, the Virgin Queen, right?
Yeah.
Powerful woman ruled on her own.
Right. That's the story we all know. But Riker says that story hides something.
Why?
She had male advisors, powerful men behind the scenes pulling strings.
So it's like looking beyond the surface, right? Yeah. Questioning those stories everyone just accepts, digging deeper to see what's really going on.
Exactly. You got to develop a critical eye, challenge those narratives we've been taught to swallow whole.
This is starting to make sense, but it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
Know? It's like questioning the foundation of everything.
It can be. But Riker says it's crucial for men who want to break free from those covert contracts. Once you see the matriarchal mirage for what it is, you can start making different choices.
Okay, so let's talk about those choices. What does Riker say men should do to take back control?
Well, one big thing she focuses on is understanding the power of modern feminism.
Okay.
And how it shaped things today.
So we're talking about feminism being behind this female supremacy.
That's Riker's argument. She says feminism started out aiming for equality right, but somewhere along the way it morphed into something else.
What do you mean?
It became about dominance. Look at how traditional masculine values are demonized now.
Yeah.
It's all about empowering women these days, often at the expense of men.
So she's saying feminism is part of the problem, not the solution.
That's her take. She says men need to be aware of the messages being pushed under the name of feminism.
Right.
And really think about whether those messages are good for both genders.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but how does that translate into action? What can a guy actually do?
Riker says men need to be more assertive, challenge those narratives, push back against those expectations. It's about recognizing that men have needs and desires too, just as valid as women's. And those needs deserve respect.
So we're talking about setting boundaries, speaking up for ourselves, refusing to play the role society wants us to play.
Exactly. It's about taking back our masculinity, redefining what it means to be a man in this day and age.
This is making me think about technology and social media, how they amplify all these messages. It's like we're constantly bombarded with this stuff that reinforces female supremacy and makes men feel weak.
Riker would agree with you there. She says tech and social media have played a huge role in shaping the landscape. They're powerful tools that can spread ideas and influence how we think. And she warns men to be careful about how these platforms might be shaping their own perceptions of gender and power.
So, like, be more critical of the media we consume.
Yes.
The messages we absorb, the algorithms feeding us information.
Absolutely. It's about becoming more media literate, being more discerning about what we let into our minds.
This is a lot to wrap our heads around. It's like questioning everything we thought we knew about men and women.
It is a big shift in thinking. But Riker argues it's necessary for men who want to reclaim their agency and build healthy relationships.
Okay, so we talked about the matriarchal mirage, the influence of modern feminism, the role of technology and social media, and it feels like we're starting to see the bigger picture here.
We are. And it's not always pretty, but awareness is the first step towards change. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some more specific strategies and tactics that Riker suggests for men who want to break free from those covert contracts and start creating a more fulfilling life on their own terms.
Okay, so the last couple parts of this deep dive have been pretty intense, right?
Yeah.
Female supremacy, those covert contracts, the matriarchal mirage. Kind of feels like the deck is stacked against you.
It can feel that way for sure.
So what's the way out? Does Riker give us any practical advice, like things a guy can actually do to change his situation?
She does, and this is where her book gets really useful. She says understanding all this is step one, but then you got to apply it in your life.
Okay.
And one of the areas she focuses on is emotional manipulation.
Emotional manipulation.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm listening. I think we've all felt that, right?
Yeah.
But how does that tie into this female supremacy thing?
So Riker's argument is that women, they've gotten really good at using emotions as a weapon, a way to control men. She's not saying it's always intentional or malicious or anything.
Right.
It's more like a strategy they've developed over time, a way to exert influence in a world where they often don't have formal power.
So like guilt trips, playing the victim, emotional outbursts, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Those are classic examples. And Riker points out that these tactics work so well because they tap into men's natural instincts to protect and care for women.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like our instincts are being used against us.
That's exactly how Riker sees it. She calls it covert power because it happens under the radar. You don't even realize it's happening half the time.
So how do you fight that? It feels like you're screwed either way. You react emotionally, you're weak. You don't react, you're the insensitive jerk.
Well, Riker says men need to develop what she calls emotional detachment.
Emotional detachment, okay.
Now, she doesn't mean becoming cold or unfeeling.
Right.
It's more about recognizing when your emotions are being manipulated and choosing not to play that game.
So step back, assess the situation, and don't get sucked in.
Exactly. Keep your cool, set boundaries. Don't let yourself be controlled by someone else's emotions.
This reminds me of those double binds Riker talks about. Like this whole emotional manipulation thing seems like a perfect example. Women benefit from those double standards, and men are left trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
That's a major part of Riker's argument. She says men need to be aware of those double standards and start calling them out.
Okay, so emotional manipulation is one area.
Yeah.
What else does she suggest men focus on?
She talks a lot about understanding female sexuality.
Okay.
And how it's used as a form of power.
All right, this is getting interesting. What's she saying about that?
Well, Riker argues that women, they understand the power of their sexuality.
Right.
And they use it to their advantage.
In what ways?
She points to things like the rise of hookup culture, the way women are hypersexualized in the media, and how women often use sex as a bargaining chip in relationships.
So it's like women are playing a different game than men.
That's what Riker's saying. She suggests men are often operating under this assumption that relationships are about love and intimacy and shared goals.
Right.
But women are more practical. They see relationships as a means to an end.
This is painting a very different picture of relationships.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway for men? How do we deal with this part of the female supremacy paradox?
Riker says men need to be more careful when choosing partners.
Okay.
Look beyond the surface. Don't just focus on how attractive she is.
Right.
Consider her character, her values, her long-term goals.
So be more strategic about relationship.
Exactly. Understand the dynamics and make choices that actually work for you.
This is heavy stuff. It's like we
Yeah.
got to rethink everything we thought we knew about relationships.
Riker's book is definitely a challenge to conventional wisdom, but for men who are ready to take that challenge, it can be really empowering. She gives you a framework to understand the power dynamics that shape how we interact with women.
Okay, so we've talked about emotional manipulation, female sexuality. What else does Riker suggest men do to deal with all this?
One of the most important things she emphasizes is self-reliance,
Okay.
self-improvement. She says, focus on your strengths, pursue your passions, build a life that's fulfilling and meaningful to you.
Without relying on a woman.
Exactly. Riker believes men need to develop their own inner strengths so they're not as vulnerable to manipulation and control.
This is making a lot of sense. It's about taking responsibility for your own life, creating the life you want.
Exactly. Riker's message is ultimately about empowerment. She wants men to wake up to the realities of the world we live in and do something to change it.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. It feels like we've just scratched the surface of Riker's work.
We have. There's a lot more to unpack.
What would you say to someone who wants to dive deeper into these ideas?
I'd say pick up a copy of The Female Supremacy Paradox. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. It's a tough read, but it could change your life.
That's great advice. This deep dive has been a wild ride, and I'm sure it's given our listeners a lot to think about.
Yeah.
It's about questioning everything we've been told and taking back our power as men.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. Challenging assumptions, exploring new perspectives, and helping you live a better life. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the topics that matter most.